at Johannesburg's OR Tambo International Airport for drug trafficking. She landed in the country from Sao Paulo in Brazil. An X-ray performed on her body confirmed that she was carrying drugs in her stomach. The woman remains in custody until she appears in court. Police say over the last month, drug traffickers have been intercepted every week. And let's talk about these trends and developments that police have shared with us with criminologist Professor Nirmala Gopal. Prof, good morning. As always, thank you very much for being available to us and your time. We see another young girl. We've seen this very often in South Africa, and you heard, or you might have heard earlier, that quote from the National Police spokesperson, Atlende Mate, talking about the frequency of these arrests, 11 arrests, similar arrests over the last 2 months. What do you read into this from a trend perspective?
Good morning, Iman, and good morning to your viewers. Thank you for having me once again. So I think my immediate response to that would be to find out, why do we have these young people? Who's profiling them, and why are they recruiting them as traffickers? That would be my immediate response.
And where do we get these answers? I mean, again, this is not a new paradigm that South Africa is in. Based on research and trends that we've seen before, what typical, what typically is the reason for, young women, especially, well, young people, especially young women, being drafted or groomed into trafficking?
So usually it's, from our research, we've noted that these are young people who are vulnerable socioeconomically, desperate to earn a living, not necessarily understanding the risks and the dangers of becoming traffickers or mules. And yeah, so those are usually the low-hanging fruit in terms of reasons for why they get recruited as drug mules or traffickers.
Just take us back into that. You know, Nirmala, since this morning, in fact, since we got news of this and having seen the pictures, you know, the slight young person barely at the start of her life, and there's been a lot of speculation about, some of the reasons why young people get pulled in. I think it's a really important awareness for families to have as well. When kids are out there in their social environments, some of the vulnerabilities that they are prone to be exposed to. Just take us more into, the anatomy of preparation and grooming right at the very beginning that you're noticing becomes that entry point into this murky world of trafficking.
Yes, I think, of course, sometimes, Iman, we think it's very simple to understand, but it actually is not. And I want to make a disclaimer at this point by saying that not all young people who come from impoverished backgrounds will necessarily end up as drug mules. But at the time, remember, people's personalities are different. Your psychology is different, and depending on what you see as goals for yourself in your life, it would determine whether these are, these attractions will actually lure you into this kind of criminal or illegal activities. In terms of where they are, the internet is just such a powerful way in which to profile and recruit young people. But also we would probably get them in bars, in social spaces where recruiters can actually profile and spot out vulnerable young ladies. So these are some of the spaces where recruiters are looking for potential targets.
And as you say, someone's not going to jump in front of you and say, what I'm assuming again, and this is what's so important, Prof. Gopal, is that we do make a lot of assumptions. So please feel free to just, neutralize any assumptions even that I'm making in the way that I'm asking the question. But, you then imagine a scenario where, a potential recruiter is not going to say, here's some drugs, traffic these drugs for me, that it would be a process of, alluring and attracting someone into that space and environment.
So absolutely, Iman, they will groom, as you rightfully pointed out at the beginning, they groom these, the drug mules. You have young people who are sitting around and somebody comes up to them. These are usually single females, would offer to buy them a drink, and depending on how that response actually happens, and then the recruiter, of course, who's really highly experienced, will be able to suss out the vulnerability and the potential of this particular candidate or potential drug mule. So it is a very complex dynamic or complex set of dynamics that are at play before they actually recruit, because there also has to be an issue of trust that the drug mule won't out them out. The ability to stay focused, not to be anxious, to be able to traffic the drugs without creating any suspicion. Well, in terms of what they believe, how suspicion will be created, etc.
And tell me, what have we found out over these last many years? As we've said repeatedly, this is not the first time a scenario like this has presented itself, and then we always end up having these marquee discussions in the aftermath of another arrest and another young person being busted. Typically, who are these recruiters, Nirmala?
So typically, yeah, and these are the people that we should actually be targeting. They're high-profiled, syndicates who, they're usually high-profile organized crime syndicates who are looking for young people to take the rap should they, be apprehended, arrested, or caught. So, gangs and
Oh, just dying because the signal is breaking throughout our interview. Prof. Nirmala Gopal, their criminologist, just talking to us about the profile and the anatomy of this drug trafficking world. And she was able to share, I think, really some important perspectives in terms of how young people are being groomed and prepped for a life in this particular field of crime, and typically saying there that typically these recruiters would belong to high-profile syndicates or even gangs. And I was really hoping to get more of that answer, because that's really where the police focus is going to be, in how you bring those syndicates, the people who are making the real money, who are making this possible, from a cross-border perspective as well. What are some of those networks that exist to be able to understand how this actually unfolds? Unfortunately, the signal broke there, so we weren't able to get those answers. But it is